Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Game Talk Radio. I'm Greg,
I'm Jen.
and today is episode 25,
A quarter of a century.
and it's Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Well, I guess happy really isn't the word, but
Yeah, well, we hope everyone takes this time to remember their loved ones, and of course, to the active servicemen and the veterans of past, and if you have family members, take some time. It's not just a 3-day weekend for funsies and grilling out. It's a time to remember those great people in our lives. So, not to start off all somber, but it's quite an important day, and it actually means something. So it's nice to acknowledge that. And so we thank you guys for your service, and we feel for anyone who's had to lose anyone to that service. So, but we're just gonna start it off. Let's kick it off right away. So a couple months ago, we talked about Netflix had gotten the rights to a Castlevania series.
oh yeah.
Now you and I have been going back and forth on this because we feel like I know we talked about it, but you seem to be under the impression that you already knew it was going to be animated.
So when you told me, hey, it's going to be animated, I'm like, I know.
You kind of looked at me like I was crazy, like, duh. And
But you think that we were just chit-chatting about it. We'll have to review the videotape.
I think we said our preference would be animated.
Yes.
But anyway, it's officially out. There's a trailer. I should say the series isn't out. The trailer is officially out.
Trailer,
It's a teaser, but at least it has substance. A lot of teasers will just show like a nameplate and then move on.
Well,
so this one does show some of the animation.
It starts off kind of hokey if you watch it.
Yeah, it started off really hokey with like someone blowing in a Castlevania cartridge, putting it into an NES, and then on the TV it popped up like an NES game, but it said Netflix, and you could choose like House of Cards, something else, and Castlevania, and then they clicked on Castlevania and it loaded into, and I don't know, I understand what they were going for. For someone who's a big game dork like me, it was a miss.
It just it didn't provide you with the right kind of nostalgia. It should have been, because you put in the cartridge, it plays that show. Like, it shouldn't.
Right. You don't put in a cartridge and pick.
It should have been
It's not a DVD.
It should have been a Netflix cartridge. I
Right.
mean, that would have made more sense why it loaded a
Yes.
Netflix screen and then you could pick different shows and everything. I just think it was a miss and they slapdashed it together.
And sadly, I think that the people who would watch a Castlevania anime are gonna be the people who would notice that.
Yes, like us.
They missed. Yeah, that was a swing and a miss on their part. But so it starts off a little hokey with this like real life intro of someone blowing in a cartridge, putting it in.
But hold on for like a good, I think it's the whole intro part is like 30 seconds until it gets to the actually good stuff.
Yeah, so you get past all the junk, and then it's an anime, and it looks really legit.
It does
looks
look really cool.
It looks very well done, and it looks awesome.
It's got like almost that old school anime or like epic anime feel to it.
Yeah, which is really funny because I watched the last season of Berserk. I haven't watched the current one that's kind of airing in Japan now. And that, for a series that's as big as that, they went as cheap as humanly possible. They use like this half CGI animation. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It looks like PS1 graphics and animation. It's so hokey sometimes. It looks really, really bad. And that's a huge franchise. So thankfully with these guys, they hired whatever company to do it well.
It almost kind of looks like Cowboy Bebop to a certain extent.
Excuse me. I just sneezed. Sorry. I was trying to like be quiet too, and I just blasted it.
I should have like paused and waited for you to sneeze, and then
I was waiting for you to
out.
talk so that I could be quiet, so that you wouldn't hear my sneeze, and then I just I put it on full blast.
It didn't work. It didn't work, Greg.
Dang it.
It almost feels like Cowboy Bebop, but it's more sepia toned. I mean, it feels like it should for a Castlevania series.
It looks reminiscent of let's say 90s and early 2000s anime before they started changing styles and color schemes and stuff. It looks really good.
It's definitely not, like Sailor Moon.
Right. And it looks
Pokemon.
it looks like they're doing.
I just wonder who the studio is.
Yeah, but it looks like they're doing well. It looks like they're going for this kind of almost a nostalgic kind of anime feel with a game that's based off a nostalgic series. Storyline, we don't know who the main character is yet, but it sounds like it's going to be Simon Belmont because they talked about how he's the one who killed Dracula, and there's something else going on, and there's a story to it. But it also looked like there was a woman character who looked kind of like a caster, and there was a female character, I'm forgetting her name all of a sudden, in Castlevania 3.
Barbie.
It doesn't matter. It was like
Babs?
Cilia or something like that.
Babs.
It doesn't matter.
It was Babs.
It was Babs. Okay, so her name was Babs. But this looks really good. So hopefully that's, a lot of the times I think something like this is perfect for it. If they try to do something live action, it probably would have been really stupid.
It would have been really hokey, and they would have spent more money on things they didn't need to, like, well, not that they wouldn't need to spend, but they would have spent a lot more money on CG and
Right.
special effects and with an anime, and that's why I wasn't surprised if we didn't know, but I have a feeling we knew that it was going to be animated. I felt that that was a good choice because you have a lot more freedom when it comes to special effects, and it's not like, the first season of the Doctor Who reboot. Well, even later seasons where the special effects are just not great.
Right.
And you're just like, oh, that looks real fake.
Yeah, even Firefly we were watching yesterday, we were rewatching, and there's a few parts in there where you just kind of cringe a little bit at the CG, but again, it's low budget, so you accept it, especially if it's a good show and good writing, but it still makes you feel a little disappointed. And so I'm glad that it went the animated route. I think it's perfect for this type of, for this source material.
It's a good choice.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that.
And I mean, if Netflix it gets more into the anime market, I mean, they've already pushed some of their own series as well on Netflix. So
Yeah,
if they become
weren't we
a
talking
big
about one
name.
last week?
Yes, it was I don't remember. It was a side comment because it wasn't actually
Yeah.
something. I was on an article and clicked to see another article, and it was actually a movie based on a series that they had already done.
Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Speaking of series,
Mm-hmm.
so some of you that are familiar with Far Cry know that it's a first-person shooter, and I found this nice little snippet on Wikipedia that I'll read for you. The Far Cry franchise has been known for putting players in exotic open-world environments such as Micronesia,
Oh, that's pretty exotic.
the Himalayas,
Very
ooh,
exotic.
Africa,
Also exotic.
and Central Europe. But we just
I don't know if I would use exotic to describe Central Europe, but okay.
well, if
Exotic
you're
to
not
us, I suppose, in the
exotic
US.
to the American market, even though it's a German creation. Didn't the Germans create Far Cry?
And Ubisoft is a French company.
Is it?
Yeah, well, that's the publisher, though. Like the
Ubisoft.
actual company that, like the actual studio that's working on it, I don't recall which studio it is, so it could be any number of their studios. But
So anyway,
so they announced Far Cry 5.
they announced Far Cry 5, and with that announcement, had some artwork as a promotional.
So obviously, I already know, but for the listeners,
For the
what
listeners.
exotic location did they pick for Far Cry 5?
It's the exotic location of Montana.
Montana,
US.
USA. Quite literally one of the most boring states in the whole world, probably.
So it looks like, well, not, I mean, yes, because
Sorry to anyone in Montana.
No,
it
no,
just
I
looks
mean,
boring.
it's a hub. I mean, it's well known, but not well known for great things. I mean, they're known for football, like college football and
college
everything,
football.
but they're also one of the biggest, like, their campuses and everything. It's well known or infamous for sexual assault.
Oh,
I read a book that
this
was
is
about.
getting worse. I thought you were actually gonna go for some redeeming qualities of Montana,
No.
and you've
Well,
totally
they have
just driven
Moose
Montana
Drool.
down
Moose,
even worse.
Moose Drool beer is really nice, Moose Drool. But there's a book that I read earlier this year that was about Missoula, and I cannot remember the name. Oh, it's something like Rape and Justice in a College Town. And it's like all these case studies or stories about how Missoula, Montana is a typical college town. It has a state university that's well renowned for football, and these football guys can essentially get away with everything,
Okay.
including rape.
They talk about that like in like Texas high schools and same sort of thing. Like it's so
Sure.
big there and it's such a big focus. So normally I would say, well, that's kind of getting off topic. Let's wrap it back around. But the story of Far Cry 5 is that you're going to be the antagonist of the series is going to be a militant Christian cult. So it looks like, I mean, the video that they released, it shows a guy almost like it's basically a mockery of the Last Supper painting.
Yes, it's so you've got the antagonist as like the Jesus focal point,
With
and
this
then
American flag, instead of stars, it's got their symbol, which is like this kind of cross with spikes on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the symbol for the cult or whatever.
And you've got like they have guns, they have moonshine. There's a dog that looks like he's got a cross made out of blood on his forehead.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Or it
There's
could be a
the
wolf.
there's the damsel, whoever that is, and some guy's stabbing a steak.
Yeah,
Compound bow. I got one of those.
and then in front there's someone kneeling down. The word sinner is carved into his back.
It's very it's pretty bad. I mean, not bad in like a. It's very well done, but it makes me really uncomfortable to watch it.
Which is by design, which I guess is impressive. I look at this and I say, we've really made a jump, haven't we? And there's got to be some sort of like cultural appreciation for the fact that a game series has gone. Now, actually, maybe you can look that up while I'm rambling on about this nonsense. But find out which studio is making this one and where it's from.
Sure.
Because now I'm pretty sure it's going to be a European studio working on this one. So if that's the case, this is something that's viewed outside the US as something that is to them an exotic location that's trying to, they're basically taking something they know exists and they're blowing it out of proportion.
Okay, it's developed by Ubisoft Montreal.
Montreal, of all places. Okay, so Canada.
Our neighbors to the north.
Oh, our northern friends. Why have you done this to us?
Oh.
But all joking aside, okay, Far Cry 3 was a really, really good game. 4, I think, was just more of the same, so it was a little of a letdown to a lot of people. 5 will probably be an amazing game, but I don't really care about how good the game's going to be at this point. I can't get over the fact that this exotic location as antagonists for this game are fringe right-wing Christian nut jobs. Now, to be clear, I am not saying all Christians are nut jobs and that all people who are conservative and on the right wing are nut jobs. I'm saying this is about fringe, crazy people.
It's essentially, it's like a doomsday cult.
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
Exactly.
It's like a Heaven's Gate or something like that.
But then they threw in like this almost sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of vibe where they've got like this sense of family and this really weird kind of, I don't want to say hillbilly thing, almost like Resident Evil 7, like the Bakers sign, almost kind of like that, except then you've got the religious undertones, which all those other games typically stay away from. Because you have to assume that this game and its theme is going to really turn a lot of people away.
Well, but you got to think about it from the perspective of the fact that the other Far Cry games took liberties with other areas as well. And so when we think of certain areas based on what we know from playing video games, we have this preconceived notion of what those people are like. And unfortunately, I'm not saying that every person outside of the US thinks that this is what Americans are like, but I wouldn't be surprised to know that a lot of them think we're a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah, I think there's starting more and more too to be like a theme around the world that this is it's like a spotlight focused on it.
Sure.
And it's no surprise, and again, I don't get super political on here for obvious reasons, but like it's no surprise because there's been an uprising ever since like technically the 80s, but really like the early 2000s. There was like this new group, quote unquote, that people found to be voters. And one of those was like what they call the, people in the Bible Belt, which is like southern United States, southeastern, south central United States. And so this is like theming after something like that. But the fact that it's gotten so big that other countries draw inspiration from that to create essentially what is like a fantasy world, but, dug in from reality out of something that we see all the time here. Mm-hmm. It's a little unsettling to me, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's quite interesting to me because we have kind of an issue here with people who call themselves like sovereign citizens. So they're people who like they don't believe that the police are allowed to do anything. They're free men of the land. They can do whatever they want. It's their property, and they don't believe that their laws, some go as far as to believe that they never joined into the contract to get a social security number, so they're not a citizen, so they're not a taxpayer. They don't like it's really it's like this free. They're called freemen sometimes, and they're this idea that they live off the land, and if they own the land, then they don't have to pay taxes, and that the government can't do anything to them. They can do whatever they want on their land, which obviously isn't true. We're a civilized nation of laws. You have to follow these laws. So.
Here's something funny, like the premise takes place in a fictional county in Montana, and the name of the preacher's congregation is called Eden's Gate.
Mm.
And they
Well,
actually
that's
say it's
definitely, yeah.
a militaristic doomsday cult. Now, for those of you who don't know about doomsday cults, it's the whole idea of the apocalypse and the fact that the world's going to end. And I mean,
They're like,
there's
we all
been
gotta drink the
lots.
Kool-Aid at the same time so that we can all get on the ship because it's about to leave or whatever.
But a lot of examples of doomsday cults are usually very extreme fanatical Christianity, the second coming of Jesus, the idea of the Antichrist, rapture,
Hmm.
all of those ideas kind of roll into this cult. There are some also that are in Islam as well. They have Islam doomsday cults.
Sure, sure. I
But
don't think it's specific to any specific religion, I suppose. I mean, it's just their
no,
idea that someone's going to take their own interpretation of events and say, the Lord would want me to put my life into my own hands, so I'm going to go to him. And to do that, to get it twisted.
right. I mean, you could probably find them in just about any area or country because I don't think they're really anything new.
Hmm.
I think for every generation of people, there's that idea that's persisting. But they've spoofed it on The Simpsons when
Yeah.
they joined that
It
cult.
just feels like it's getting bigger and like big enough to be a central theme of a game that's based off of, because the idea of Far Cry, the last Far Cry 3 and 4 anyway, the central idea was that there's some, dictator and you have to overthrow their government and get out alive. Now, does it say, if I remember correctly or if I read correctly, is it true that the protagonist is a woman as well?
Oh, let me check.
I believe that's true. And that also brings into this other play of
It
no.
says the players can customize the character's appearance, gender, and skin tone.
Oh, well, that's okay. So that's kind of a first, I think, for the series, but that's awesome. Because I was gonna say, if it was a female-only character, that would bring in the a lot of people feel like right-wing, crazy right-wing fanatics like this in the game. Not
Mm-hmm.
all right-wing fanatics. I feel like I have to keep saying that because I don't want someone to pick this up and be like, "Wait a minute, you don't like people go to church?" Absolutely not. I'm not knocking that at all.
No, it's just like with any sort of religion or any sort of organization, there are going to be people that are going to take it too far and
Right.
take things or interpret things in a way that it's not meant to be interpreted.
Quite literally, the term fanatic.
Yes.
My problem or my worry then would have been, since a lot of people would view those fanatics as having issues with women's rights and being much more traditional when it comes to things like marriage and essentially ownership, including ownership over people, that sort of thing I could have seen being a real issue, like a sensitive subject for people. But since it's your story to tell, imagine how different that would be if you played that game and you made a female character,
Mm-hmm.
and I played that game and I made a male character.
Oh.
Like it's a weird perspective shift, I think, based off of the source material.
I wonder if the game is smart enough to have like different dialogue or different, you know
I
what I
hope
mean?
so,
Like
'cause that
if
would be really neat.
depending on the gender that you choose.
Well, and imagine if they acted differently to you, or they said things like the guys would say nasty things to you if you were a
Right.
woman, or maybe if you're a guy, they'll use. And I'm not saying this is in the game. I don't know, but what if the guys would use towards another guy? They'd use like homophobic slurs and stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like that. That would be something that be. Those are the sort of things I'm wondering about, if they're how far they're going to take this theme. Because you could take this idea and you could take it really far. Like there's certain movies out there, like there's a movie called Red State, which is a Kevin Smith movie. I think it's awful. A lot. I think it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But I've talked to people that actually like it, and it's basically kind of the same thing. Like this right-wing religious cult ends up getting in like this big shootout with police, and they kidnap a few people in this compound that they're on. So I wonder how far a game will take some of those themes. Like I said, the homophobia and some of the, God says this can't happen, so we enforce this.
Mhm.
Like, how far are they going to push it?
Well, it depends on the type of research that they did. I mean, I think if you're going to be doing a game of this quality and this caliber, that you would do your due diligence when it comes to, how do these people act around people who aren't one of their own? How do they act when they're threatened? I mean, all of that adds to the realism of the game. So if they wanted to create a very realistic, very well received, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like they get positive feedback even though the material is very negative. I mean, if I were doing that kind of game, I would do that kind of research. So I would
Yeah.
hope that a big development company like Ubisoft would do that kind of.
I know they're going to do their homework. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know they're going to do the research. I'm just wondering how many meetings they were in and said, "Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you got to scale that back,
Well, I
or you got
think
to pull that back."
what is it rated?
It's definitely rated M for mature, no question.
Doesn't even say.
Yeah, it will. It's probably not rated yet because it hasn't gone through ESRB rating yet, but it's absolutely 100% rated M.
So I mean, they have a lot more liberties when it's
Oh yeah.
that.
There's even a scene. I think it's Far Cry 3. One of the endings, like it ends with essentially what's a sex scene. So like there's like the
Yikes.
head of this tribe or whatever, and like the camera views from. I'm like trying to say this like really PG for everybody listening, but like the camera view is you on the is the camera view on the bottom, and you're looking up,
Okay.
and the woman's on top of you, and she's topless, and it's simulating that whole thing. So I mean, they've definitely pushed the envelope of what you can do in a game. Like what you can put in before you
Sure.
get out of the mature rating and into the X rating, which
Do they have games like that?
they have what they call AO, which is adult only.
Okay.
But if a game's going to get an adult only, they'll actually edit stuff out of it because adult only games aren't carried in stores like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, or GameStop. So if you get an
Ah.
adult only rating, it's like the nail in the coffin for your game. But I'm not saying that someday somebody won't do that. Because you could be like the first AO game if you could just do it digitally. But if you can't get it on into people's hands, how are you going to sell it? Like on your website, I guess. But maybe Sony may not even certify it. So you may not even be able to
Sure.
release an AO game technically on the PS4.
So if they don't sell it in like Best Buy, Target, Walmart, those places, GameStop, where do they sell it?
Well, that's exactly it. You
Oh.
really can't sell it unless you create your own distribution chain. So you don't sell it, and then the game doesn't sell, so it wasn't worth even releasing it. So what they'll do is they'll pull the game back. They'll look at what the ESRB rating board says for why it got an adult only, and they'll edit that stuff or take it out.
So it's a lot like movie licensing, or not licensing, movie ratings.
Right, like when you watch the commentary for Orgasmo, they talk about how that movie got an NC-17 rating. And they were really mad about it because there's nothing in that movie to make it NC-17. In fact, most of the nudity is covered up. So it's really, really strange. And they talk about how that it couldn't be shown in most theaters at NC-17. So Orgasmo had no chance whatsoever of making it in the theaters because it was really limited release. And then it found a cult following when it released on VHS.
Sure. It looks like the last game that was rated AO, at least according to this Wikipedia.
Wait, let me guess. Was it... Well, no, go ahead and tell me.
Okay.
Was it San Andreas?
No.
Grand Theft Auto? Okay.
No, but that was 2004.
Yeah, because...
Really?
Well, here's what happened. So...
It says... Oh, okay.
They made the game. It got a mature rating. Then the PC version came out a few months later. Somebody was modding and dinking around in the files on the PC because they were looking around for hidden stuff in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And they found essentially what was a sex minigame called Hot Coffee.
Yep,
Right?
that's what it says.
So you cannot access it through the game. It was basically laziness on the developer's part
Sure.
because what they did was when they had to pull that out to go back down to mature rating,
They commented it out.
they put a wall up. Yep, they put a wall up. They didn't take it out of the game.
Oh, man.
On console, without even with cheat devices at the time, there was no way to access it. On PC, they found out ways to access it.
Huh.
The problem then was technically the files and the games that were in stores that were labeled as mature. Once all that stuff came out the PC version, ESRB re-rated it as adult only.
Oh.
Once it got re-rated as adult only, GameStop recalled all of its copies and sent them back. Every game had to get recalled and sent back. So there are actually copies still out there. In fact, there's a lot of them because they sold really well. But it's an interesting piece of a game getting out, them finding something in the game later, changing it, and the retailers responding to that. So there's actually a way you can tell if it's like black label and it's got a barcode on the back, then it's like the original print. Otherwise, if it's red label or if it's a black label where it says part of a
Oh.
set, then it's not. So you can actually find the copies that are still, but honestly, there's millions of them out there. So it's not ever going to be like rare and hard to find. But anyway, so what is the last AO game?
It was in 2015. It was Eden Star
Is that a
plus
is that like a
Mosaic.
is that like a Steam game, like one of those graphic
It
novel?
was published by Manga Gamer.
Yeah, it sounds like visual novel. So it's just
Okay.
basically a bunch of naked pictures and then talking and
So then,
text.
other than that, there was a game called Hatred,
Okay, I don't know anything
which
about that one.
was a Steam game, it
Wait,
looks
oh,
like.
that got adult only?
Yeah.
I think Hatred's the one where it got a bunch of flack, didn't it? Because it was basically you going around being able to kill anybody you want to and like really brutally murder people.
Let's see. It says it's an isometric shoot 'em up developed and published by Destructive Creations that was released June 1st, 2015 on Windows. The player character is a misanthropic, mass-killing sociopath who begins a genocide crusade to kill as many human beings as possible.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think the game's very good, but
Well, there's no screenshots or anything like that. Um, Otherwise, there's F, a fairy tale of the two. So I mean, it looks like the ESRB content descriptors is like nudity, strong language,
yeah.
strong sexual content, blood and gore, so on and so forth. Manhunt 2, the uncut
Oh,
version back in '09. Boy, Rockstar, are you sassy
they're
boys?
they're always pushing the limits, that's for sure. So Hatred is on Steam. It's $9. And its recent is very positive. Its overall is mostly positive. Out of 3,600 reviews, it's mostly positive.
Yeah, it says it focuses on a main character who indiscriminately murders every person he encounters.
Yeah, this is the about the game on Steam. Hatred fills your whole body. You're sick and tired of humanity's worthless existence. The only thing that matters is your gun and the pure Armageddon that you want to unleash. That's the first paragraph of the description of that game.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm totally got to play that later. But okay, so yeah, the adult only rating is kind of a death knell. So obviously it'll never come out with that because it just won't be able to. But I'm wondering how hard they'll be able to push that limit because that's very cool. But again, it was more about the themes. I guess to me it's weird because it's close to home, and I grew up in a small town of like 500 people, where the church, like, just so all the listeners know, like I'm not a religious person anymore. I don't have a problem with people that are religious. I just personally choose not to be. And I grew up in a small town that was very religious. In fact, it didn't have a community center. It didn't have things like that. It had a church.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that was organized by the town was at the church. Even fundraisers sometimes for the school, we were allowed to do stuff at the church, even though that'd be totally be something you're not supposed to be able to do. And which was okay. And so it hits kind of close to home for me, I guess. And so it's a little it's unsettling, but I want to play it more because of that. It's not turning me off to the game. It's just unsettling in, I guess, a positive way, if there's such a thing.
Well, right. I mean, I think you can say that about any game that's come out that takes place in the U.S. It's all caricature. It's all meant to be fantasy. It's not technically based on any one particular thing. It's an amalgamation of several different things. It's taking all
Yeah.
the worst bits and rolling them up into one character. And I mean, the main antagonist is probably going to be a guy that you so loathe, but it's like the guy you love to hate. So he's probably going to be really funny and pretty charismatic,
Yeah, very
because
charismatic.
how
Like,
else would he
yeah,
have all of these people following
yeah,
him? So you're probably going to, at some point, playing this game, going and say something like, oh, okay, that's what he's saying to
right,
get all of these people. That's going to make a lot of sense to these people. It may not make sense to you as the average person, but how else do all of these, cult leaders create
right,
this
right.
group of people? I mean, even someone like Charles Manson, people who knew him thought he was a very charismatic, very good looking, very funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
He just,
Kind of like me.
well, you're not a sociopath.
Well, not that you know of.
Ah, that's not funny.
All right, so moving on. That was heavy. That was a lot heavier than I thought it would be, but that was
Yeah.
that was a pretty serious talk. That was what I was thinking when I saw it.
Uh-huh.
That's why. I mean, obviously the big news was, hey, a new Far Cry game, woo! And then I looked at it and thought, wow,
I think they also probably felt like, well, we've kind of done Europe already, so let's pick on a different place.
maybe.
I mean, you could
It's
probably.
kind of the flavor of the month, though. Like with everything, I mean, argue what you want about our political climate, but overseas there's a lot of hatred for, you know, people in our political system, and not just in Europe, but I mean other places. Like there's a lot
I
of
don't think it's just. I think they, they meaning other people outside of the U.S., are more against what's happening right now in the climate of the world, which is
right,
extremism.
right, very true, very very good point.
So it's just a take on that
This is it's
extremism.
like it's like an over exaggeration of extremism in our country.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
So,
So on a lighter note,
mhm.
and a make Greg very happy note,
So Capcom just announced that Monster Hunter, you called it Double
Double
Cross. It's
Cross.
it's 20 or
It's
XX,
XX, which they're not up to 20 Monster Hunters yet, thankfully. Well, they might be in Japan actually if you count all
which
the Xbox ones.
was originally released on the 3DS as an expanded version of another game, is actually going to be also coming to the Nintendo Switch.
Right, so this is really hard to keep track of. So stay with me on this one. Monster Hunter Cross, which is the not Double Cross that came out in 3DS a few months ago, but regular Cross came out last year. We got that game as Monster Hunter Generations. Okay. Then this year, I don't even know where to begin with this. Normally, the way Monster Hunter works is in Japan, they do one almost every single year, and they usually give us every other one. So, what they like to do is they like to make a game like Monster Hunter Cross. Then they make a new version of it with added monsters and a few other little things, and then they call it like Double Cross. Or what they used to do is they used to call it Monster Hunter and then Monster Hunter G. And G was like their almost like a director's cut, you can think of it. So it's the same game, they just add some more stuff to it. Well, in the States, they weren't bringing out every version because I guess maybe they thought we wouldn't buy everyone. Like they knew in Japan the market was big enough where they could get away with it. Here they would only bring out every other one. So what I'm nervous about, first of all, they haven't even announced this for the US yet. All they've said is it's that Double Cross is coming to the Switch in Japan on August something.
Mhm.
But if this is technically the X or G version of Monster Hunter Generations, which we already got. So if they follow their typical pattern, we won't get this game. So yeah, which
Boo.
would be very very sad. But I'm very excited to get this game, and I want to. If by some chance they don't bring this out over here, I'll just import it. The Switch is region free,
What?
so
Will
I
it
can
be
still
in
play it.
English?
No, but a lot of the pictures are the same. So like when you're playing the game, you'll be able to figure it out. Like I've played enough Monster Hunter to be able to get through, and I've technically already played this game. I played Generations, which is like Monster Hunter Cross, so I've already got a basis for what to do and where to go in the game to do different things. So I really hope I don't have to do that. I just want them to bring it to the States. The one plus thing is that normally when we do get a game here that's already a Monster Hunter game that's been released somewhere else, we get it around 6 to 8 months after release. Coming out in August, that'll be about 6 to 8 months after the release of the original Cross for the 3DS. So we might get lucky, and since they're putting on a new platform, they're putting on the Switch, we might get lucky, and they might have already been translating it over here. And if they've already been working on translating it over here, they might just bring it finally. So I'm very, very excited. Monster Hunter is a great time. I used to stream it with Austin, Jared, and Josh, and we just haven't been able to the last couple. But last time I was playing it with my brother Joe and Mike, and we've got our team in place. And Jordan from Drop Rate will probably be like our fourth, and we're
Mhm.
just gonna tear that game up. I'm very, very,
Nice.
very, very excited for that. So yeah, that's it. And Monster Hunter gets very confusing because in Japan it's got a really big following, and it's been taking a long time to get a following here. But it's really been everyone that comes out just draws a few more people in, and so it's definitely a great game. I just don't like playing it on a handheld. I played Monster Hunter Generations, and I just really struggled with my hands cramping up all the time, and like I just want to play Monster Hunter with a controller on my TV.
Mhm.
If I get the Switch version, I finally can do that again. And it's really easy to stream. I can hook that up to my PC, and I can do live streaming, and I can do recorded videos. That's all the sort of stuff that like I've been missing out on Monster Hunter, because Monster Hunter hasn't been on a home console since the Wii U version of 3G, which was, if I had to guess, I'm just going to say, I don't know, 5 years ago or
Okay.
something like that. So it's gonna be the first one that's on a TV that I can play with a regular controller
Well,
in a long
and
time.
the theory is that with Monster Hunter coming to the Switch is kind of like a combination between a console and a handheld. So that's probably the perfect market for anybody that has ever had an interest in it. because you get the handheld aspect because it's a Switch and it's portable.
Right.
Plus, you get the hook up to the TV.
And they're doing what they did with Monster Hunter 3G when Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate is what it was called. When Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate came out here, it was for the 3DS and for the Wii U. So that was kind of weird. It launched dually on both, but you could actually download an app that would let you transfer your saves back and forth. And you could play wirelessly with 4 people in the same room.
Dang.
2 people with a Wii U, or 1 person with a Wii U and 3 people with 3DSs could all play together.
Wow.
So it's actually kind of neat. They've announced that that's going to be in this version too. Someone with a 3DS can play with someone on a Switch.
That's
And
cool.
I think that's very cool. So there's some really neat things. And since the Switch is so young here in the States, like it is in Japan, but like it's so young, my thought would be you want to bring out all your best games right away to the Switch. So this should be a game that's being translated. I'm hoping at E3 or before E3, Nintendo will do like Nintendo of America will say, hey, it's coming out here. It's most likely like if I'm putting on my actual what I know about Nintendo hat, it's going to be probably next February that we'll get it. But in my dreams, I'm hoping to get it the same time in August or maybe even in September, October.
You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, we saw a lot of advertisements for the Switch and so on. But surprisingly, now that I'm thinking back on our time in Japan, I don't think I ever saw anybody playing a Switch.
There was nobody who had a Switch on the trains. That's
No.
for sure. It was everybody had 3DSs or DS Lites
Or they were
or their
playing
phones.
in their phone.
Yeah.
Most of I think I would say 90% of the people we saw on the train that was doing something were playing on their phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think I only saw one guy playing on a handheld.
Yeah, it wasn't very many. And even Ashley, who had her Street Pass thing going, she didn't get as many as you'd think you would be for the hundreds of thousands of people we walked by on like a daily basis
True.
there.
All right. Well, speaking of video games,
That was a good transition there.
no, it wasn't.
So this is actually, we get to end the show on a sad, stupid, annoying note because, well, I shouldn't say sad, like in the gist of things, it's not really that big of a deal in the gist of life, but in our video game lives.
Yes, in our video game lives, it's very sad. So you know how Square Enix was working with CyberConnect 2 to develop a Final Fantasy VII remake, Greg?
Well, what's funny is I didn't know who they were working with, but I knew, yes, that they were doing a Final Fantasy VII remake. A couple years ago at E3, it was unbelievable for the PS4. I was sitting there with a few people because it's like a tradition where we always watch the Sony press conference at the store after it's like right at we close is when it goes live. So we were watching it, and they announced just 3 heavy hitters. They announced Last Guardian was coming out, and that was one of those games that had been kind of been in limbo for like 6 years. Or 10 years. That's coming out. Then they announced they're doing a Kickstarter for Shenmue 3, which Shenmue people have been asking for a new Shenmue game since the Dreamcast. And then finally they're like, oh, and we're remaking Final Fantasy VII. So
By the way,
3 of these just heavy hitters. It was like one after another. And as a Sony fan, you're sitting there like, oh my God, it could not get any better than this. So anyway, that was a couple years ago now. So we've just been waiting. There was rumors for a while that even as early as last January, like a year before last January, it was going to be like, oh, the first episode's coming out. Because one of the things they've decided to do, since this game is such a big project, is they want to release it episodically. So they're going to take the whole Final Fantasy VII game, the whole 100, 200 hours of it, and they're going to break it up into chunks and sell it like, maybe you buy a season pass for $60 and you download every part when it comes out, or you buy a disc with part 1, you download the rest, however they want to distribute it. The idea, though, is that we'll get the game eventually. And we thought as early as starting last year even. That's what they'd kind of hinted at.
So like you said, back in 2015.
That was 2015. That was 2 years ago. Okay.
Or Square Enix was talking about working with CyberConnect 2, which is known for Naruto and Dot Hack.
So I don't know what Naruto games they did, but the Dot Hack games are well received from the fans. I personally think they're not very good. There are a lot of people that like them though, and the 4th one in the series we recently had in the store, and it was $160.
Dang.
Like the game's crazy rare, yeah.
Well, during a Final Fantasy stream, a Square Enix developer by the name of Naoki Hamaguchi said that I've taken over the development side of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Quote, up until now, development has progressed by receiving external collaboration, but from here on out, with production and quality in mind, we're shifting to our in-house organization. This company decision was made wanting to control quality as well as keeping the schedule stable.
So there's a lot of interesting things going on there.
Yeah, a little sensitive of a subject for him, I think.
One thing is that clearly the game's not going how they want it to be.
Nope.
Hands down, that's just that you read between the lines straight up. Development's not going how they want it.
Mm-hmm.
So that sucks because
Yes.
But I have to tell you, I did not know that this was being outsourced, and now I get almost offended at the thought that it is. I guess now it's good because it's coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
But seriously, what were they thinking? This is like the biggest project they've worked on in how many years? And they're just like, well, you guys made some successful RPGs on the PS2. On the PS2, okay. So 12 years ago, you guys were successful. So here you go. Here's the reins to our biggest remake and our most expensive game we ever made.
Well, you can make some allusions or some connections to maybe they want to avoid what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda. And here you go, tiny little BioWare that hasn't really done a big AAA development game. Take one of our bigger franchises and build this new game. Here you go.
Right.
And it wasn't until it was actually too late that they're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny the angle a lot of people are taking now, because there was a time where they all did everything internally. They start to grow, and then when they're growing, they decide, okay, well, now that we're getting too big, we can't make 5 games at once. We'll make the 3 we've always been making, and we'll outsource 2.
Right.
You know, it's not that that's a bad idea, but they outsource to these cheaper studios. They're trying to save money, and almost all those studios have pulled it back now.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got Square, like, cutting ties with some studios and pulling development internal. Capcom, in their most recent thing, they were saying we need to develop more internal.
Yep.
So they're taking stuff internal. Sega saying the same thing. We need to stop outsourcing all of our games and start building stuff in-house with our own quality control. It's all there, so they all had to go through that phase of, hey, let's save some money. Oh, all these people made crappy versions of our properties and they all lost value. Oh, now let's go back.
I think that that's what's happening. I mean, they probably saw some preliminary gameplay, some screenshots, something, and they're like, the mechanics that you're working with, the things that you're doing, this is not up to our high standard of quality, so you're fired essentially, and we'll take it back.
Well, there was also an interview in Famitsu, which is a really big magazine in Japan, back in December of 2015, where apparently someone complained about one of the trailers that CyberConnect 2 did for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and they wanted it, quote-unquote, done in a more Square Enix style.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess basically they were making the game they wanted to make, and Square Enix was like, this is not good. So the bright side to that is somebody at Square Enix, or Squeenix for short, somebody at Squeenix said, whoa, wait. This is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is our number one property. We cannot screw this up.
Well, right.
And especially in this day and age where it's all about profits and squeezing product out and just getting people to buy your stupid crap for as cheap as possible, they're choosing not to do that. Because as we found out with Mass Effect, video games are very much a what have you done for me lately industry. It doesn't matter how good Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 are. If you crap the bed on Mass Effect 4,
mm-hmm.
they don't go, well, you know what? It's okay because the first 3 were so darn good.
Right.
They say it's worse because the first 3 were so good.
It's funny, though, because when I think back to my time playing Uncharted, I started with Uncharted 1,
Yep.
and I played all the way through. And I didn't have an experience like that with, like, how people had that experience with Mass Effect, because every game that Naughty Dog did in the Uncharted franchise got better each time. So, like, there were little tweaks along the way.
Even the 4th one, which you could argue the original trilogy, you might hit your peak.
Uh-huh.
But the 4th one was the best one they've ever done.
It
just blew it away.
Exactly. It was so well done. And I can't even imagine how people felt. Like, if I would have played the last one of Uncharted and it was not even remotely as good in terms of storyline, character development, gameplay, voice acting, as the first one, like if it reverted back. And I'm not saying that the first one was bad, it just kept getting better. So when you compared the
Right.
first and the fourth, it was like,
It is, and yeah, like you said, the first one wasn't bad, but it
no,
is a little tough to go back and play now after playing the other ones. Like if you tried
right.
to replay through them again, I don't think you'd get all the way through the first one. It just is missing something.
But I mean, so I'm thinking of like, how would I feel if something like that happened to Uncharted? Like, let's say they came out with a fifth one, even though, all the franchise is done, blah, blah, blah. And I'm okay with that because it ended so well. Like, it was the best storyline that they could have probably done. But if they would have left it open for whatever reason and then made a game, and that game was like Andromeda or what I've seen of
Yeah.
Andromeda, I would be really PO'd.
Well, Square will lose a lot of fans if that game comes out and it is not. And they've only themselves to blame because they
Yes.
made a great game, but then they never gave they teased when the PS3 was going to launch. They actually made a trailer. They took the original Final Fantasy VII trailer and redid it what it would look like on the PS3.
Oh,
So they planted the seed in all of us that said, "Oh my God, a Final Fantasy VII remake would be amazing because it came out on the PS1. It's a great story, but the PS1 was limited on what it could do graphically,
right.
obviously." What I struggle with then is they have to make a good product, or us customers will be extremely disappointed.
Hmm.
And again, their fault. But now you toy with us, you say it's coming out, and now you're dinking around with it again. It's
Well,
just it's
and
worrisome
now
to
the
me that
CEO of Square Enix, Yosuke Matsuda, says that it's not even going to be expected within the next 3 years.
right. So on this conference call or whatever with investors, they're like, "Well, expect this game in the next 3 years or so." So now we all thought that the first episode might come out last year, which I didn't really believe, but was hoping. Now we may see it come out in the next couple of years just for the first part. But again, change development studios. If it's not in the right path, they have to rework the whole thing. They might have just lost the 2 years that they've been working on it.
Well, right. So do you think, knowing what you know of video game development and your own kind of gut feeling, do you think they're going to be doing this episodic sort of treatment, or do you think they're going to create one game and not do the three pushes like was originally talked about?
That's hard to say because if it depends how much of development they have to scrap.
True.
If they look at the whole project and it's hot garbage, then then if it's a dumpster fire, then they need to start from scratch. They might change it and they might say, you know what, episodically we don't need to do that. We can just do everything up front. We've already got everything planned out. We just need to create the assets, or a lot of the assets are probably created because I don't think they screwed up like 3D models and stuff. So if a lot of the art assets are fine and they just have to kind of go through and rework things, then I don't think they have to. So it depends. I think they're going to scrap the whole concept and start over, which is why they're saying 3 years or so. And I think we will get the whole game at once. That's what I think.
And we haven't even touched on the fact that Kingdom Hearts is included on that as well.
That's what I was gonna say. So then, as we're here on the ground after our sucker punch to our Final Fantasy VII hearts, then all of a sudden they come by and they kick you right in the Kingdom Hearts 3.
But I think, quite honestly, I think more people are willing to wait for Kingdom Hearts or not remake, but another Kingdom Hearts game, just because I think those are well worth the wait. I mean, I've only played the first one, but I thought that game was beautiful and brilliantly done
Yeah.
and very, very
Well,
good.
we've been waiting a long time already. I think part of my problem is their lack of communication on the subject, because it should not take more than 3 years to make Kingdom Hearts 3. It just doesn't take that long. If you focus on development, it can come out. Here's what I'm wondering, and I know this sounds here. Get my tinfoil hat out, put it on. But we've seen for PS3, we saw them remake Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2. Then they made Kingdom Hearts 2.8 for PS4, which included all the Kingdom Hearts games up to that point.
Okay.
So I'm starting to think, well, are they pushing back the release because they're making a bunch of money off the old games?
That could be it.
Why release 3 when you can release remakes of 1 and 2 and all of the ones that came out before? So now that they've exhausted all those options, now they're probably going to begin full development of 3. But and Kingdom Hearts is never a game that's going to fade away. Like, it's going to be in everyone's minds forever because it was a really memorable experience. So it's not like even if you left Kingdom Hearts for 5 years and came back, you're still going to be able to remember what it is, and it's going to be fresh. It's going to have fresh legs. It doesn't need to be like, you don't need to remind us. It's like Final Fantasy. You don't need to remind us that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
You just keep releasing it. But I feel like they're still milking the earlier Kingdom Hearts, and they had to make their money doing that. Now they can wrap around and
Well,
finish 3.
I mean, I agree. I think they may be making a lot of money on the ports and making it, for PlayStation, for newer versions of the PlayStation. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article for Kingdom Hearts, and it says that, in an interview in September of 2010, Tetsuya Nomura stated that his team was too busy with other projects such as Final Fantasy XV, also known as Final Fantasy Versus 8, to work on Kingdom Hearts 3. And he was doing research on, doing some high definition graphics, depending on the technical requirements of newer consoles. And in 2013, there was a teaser for Kingdom Hearts 3 that said that it was in development for the PlayStation 4.
Right.
In 2013.
Yeah. So you said Tetsuya Nomura is heading up Kingdom Hearts 3?
That was in an interview. It said that his team was too busy. I don't know if he's actually doing it.
Because Nomura is who's doing the Final Fantasy VII remake. So if he was supposed to be in charge of both, maybe he wasn't going to be in charge of the 7 remake. He was working on Kingdom Hearts 3. Then the other studio craps the bed, and he has to pick up that studio now too. So is that why both games are getting delayed? Because essentially his team is working on both games now?
Well, I thought he was the one. Oh, I closed that other article. Give me a second here.
That's what it sounds like to me, though. It sounds like they're going to bring him in to fix Final Fantasy VII, but he's right now deep into I guess somewhere in development of Kingdom Hearts 3. So then that might be why both games are going to take 3 years, because now he's essentially doing...
He's doing 2 games.
Because why would they connect the both otherwise? Why on the conference call would they say Final Fantasy VII Remake and Kingdom Hearts are delayed 3 years or so? Unless... how would you know that if not the same team was working on them?
No, that's a good point. I actually made a mistake. When I read this article initially, I thought that the statement said that Final Fantasy VII is being headed up by Tetsuya Nomura. I thought it said being held up by Tetsuya Nomura.
Oh.
So I was like, I don't... and then I had to open that article again. But you're right, yes. So Final Fantasy VII is being headed up by Tetsuya Nomura. And it sounds like he's also in charge of Kingdom Hearts 3. I mean, that's a lot for one team. I don't know how many people are on his team, but... speaking from experience for working on multiple high priority projects, you can't you have to fish or cut bait. You can't work on every high priority thing at one time. You have to pick one, work on it to a point where you can either stop or have somebody take it the rest of the way. But you cannot split your time. You're going to sacrifice quality because you're trying to pull yourself into 2 different directions.
Right. You'd want to focus.
Yes.
And lock down. You want one of these to be your project. And if you're bouncing back and forth, how do you do that?
So depending on how many people are on his team, theoretically, he could split his team and have one team be the Final Fantasy team, one other part of the team be the Kingdom Hearts 3 team. But even... I don't know what he does in his capacity as being the head of that development, if he has to approve every decision or what, or if he can delegate. It all depends on that. But if he's able to delegate in the right way and get the right people working on things, then it's doable. It's just a lot to take on because a lot of people are going to be playing this and reviewing it. And so there's a lot of pressure.
Right. Yeah, here's something else to think about. This year will be the 4-year anniversary of the PS4 already.
Already?
So if you're talking, November, if you're talking that this game will be out in 3 years or so, we're going on year 7 or 8 for the PS4 by the time those games come out.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that by that time, there should already be a PlayStation in development, if not already launched at that point. Because it was 2006 to 2013 2013 was the PS3, so 7 years.
Okay.
So 7 years, from the launch of that would be around the three. So is it going to come out on PS4 still, or are they going to push it to whatever's later?
I just don't understand why they have to come out with the system already. It just feels like the PlayStation 4 is still so new. And plus, when did the PlayStation 4 Plus come out?
Well, the Pro came out last year,
Or
and that's a
Pro.
that's a good point because they can kind of do this 2.5 system where it's just got more power. That is kind of a game changer in the sense that if they can get people to adopt that, they don't necessarily have to launch a new system. But they might have to, because if they all of a sudden start making games, if all the newer games don't work on old PS4s, only newer PS4s, that starts to get really confusing for customers, and they start to get irritated by that, and that'll cut into your sales. So just another thing to think about when it comes to that.
I just feel like having a new system come out so frequently, to me, just doesn't make sense.
7 or 8 years isn't that frequently, though. If you really think about, think of the trends that change, and think of all the technology that changes in 7 or 8 years. I actually think a 7 or 8 year console life is pretty good, in my opinion.
I just don't like the fact that, if you want to keep current with some franchises, you have to keep buying new consoles.
Right, and I don't have a problem with upgrading. I actually like new consoles because a lot of the times there's only so much you can do with what you have. And so there comes a point where all the things you want to do, you can't do. Sony did really good this generation. They got streaming, they got all the Facebook integration, all the menus are fast. It's still a very strong machine. Even now, it's still playing everything fine that PCs can run for the most part, as long as it's tweaked for the PS4 settings.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. The PS2 came out in 2000, and the PS3 came out in 2006. That was only 6 years in between. The original Xbox came out in 2001. The 360 came out in 2005. That was 4 years apart for a new system there. And then the Wii came out in 2006. The Wii U came out in 2012, so that was 6 years. But now look at 2012 from the Wii U. And the Switch in 2017, that's 5 years. It's very... And technically it's 4.5 because the Wii U launched 2012 November.
Oh, sure.
And
so practically 2013.
Practically 2013 to 2017. So barely 4 years in between the Wii U and the Switch.
I don't know. I just... you have to understand something about me is that I was still playing a GameCube. 5 years ago, I was still playing a GameCube. I had a PlayStation 2 up until when I bought my PlayStation 4. I like playing the same console. When I was a kid, we had a Nintendo Entertainment System and then a Super Nintendo, but I don't know how long it was between those consoles, and I think we had a Nintendo 64. But it's just, I don't know. I think what really frustrates me as a consumer is that as soon as that new console comes out, all games for my old console, any new games, stop. Because then everything's made for the new console.
Right, they have to kind of transfer their resources to the new system. But what would be really nice, now that Sony, with the PS4 especially, the way they designed it was now it's a much more traditional processor archetype. The way the system's built is much more like a PC. So if they do a new version of, say they do the PS5, they should be able to make it very similarly architecture-wise to a PS4, so it should be able to play all the games from a PS4.
But don't you think it would make more sense and save money if you just sold, instead of a brand new machine, you sold updates?
Maybe.
Hardware, that kind of thing?
Back in the day with the Neo Geo systems, the cartridges were this big. It looked like a VHS tape almost.
Sure.
Because they built half the hardware into the cartridges to run it. But then the cartridges were, way more expensive than a game would be. Obviously, that's not quite what you're saying. But I don't know if that'd be better or worse. Would you like it that every other year you had to buy $100 piece of equipment? I guess it's the same thing. It's like my computer. Every couple of years I buy a new video card to upgrade it so that it still is the best one on the market.
I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this. It's I have a MacBook. I've used this MacBook for about five years.
Mm-hmm.
I get my MacBook updates when an update comes out, and I upgrade to a new platform or a new operating system. I don't have to pay for that. I already bought the machine.
Right, but software updates are really different from hardware though. Like, because you'll admit on your MacBook using that example that it's been chugging lately.
It has. It's
Like,
really
if you bought
frustrating.
a new MacBook, it would just it would go so
Smoke.
fast. It would do everything so much faster. But it's still able to do what you want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine if all of a sudden the next version of Photoshop came out and said we only support Mac OS whatever and higher because the old ones can't run it.
Right.
But again, that's different because usually you can upgrade, but then you try to upgrade your Mac OS and it says, "Oh, your computer doesn't have, 8-core processing, so you can only go up to Snow Leopard or whatever the Mac OS versions are." So, but it's interesting. So, you take a look at all that sort of stuff and you hate delays, but usually delays are a good thing because they're pushing a game to be better. And at
Right.
least they recognize that it was kind of a turd and then they decide to turn it around.
And a lot of it is also, covering their own investment into that game because like you said, if they found that what they were seeing was not up to their standards, good for them for realizing it now as opposed to right before launch and people get early copies or beta tests and they're like, this is a
early
turd.
and early impressions are bad because you can't ever.
Yes.
What was it? You get one chance to make a first impression.
Yep.
That's it. And
Yep.
once it's out there, it's over.
So, well done, Square Enix.
Yeah, good on you for pulling it back and not pulling a Andromeda.
Yeah, don't.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. That's our episode on this beautiful Monday, Memorial Day. Everyone take some time again to appreciate your loved ones.
Thank a veteran.
Yeah, thank veterans. Shake their hand, especially an older gentleman. Buy a. Is it a poppy?
Buy a poppy.
Buy a poppy. Support your local legions and stuff like that. There's some really good stuff you can do to help out. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at GameTradeGreg. That's Greg with 2 G's at the end.
That's also Twitter for me at GameTalkGen.
And you
One
can-
N.
And one N. And you can tweet us questions, and if you want to be part of the show, just ask us anything. We'd love to answer it. We'd love some fan interaction. Otherwise, we appreciate everyone as always listening, and y'all have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.